What is your purpose? Because if going to work as a contractor or a government professional provides you the purpose you feel you provide to this earth, then it's going to be difficult to step away from that unless you can redirect that purpose somewhere else.
Welcome to the Fiscal Foxhole, the podcast proving you don't need a degree in finance, just some grit, a game plan, and maybe a sense of humor. Your hosts are retired Army veteran Rob Moore and retired Marine veteran Omen Kwalvog. Together, they'll help you dodge financial landmines, call in the air support on your savings, and laugh at the ridiculous money mistakes we've all made. If you can survive mandatory fund days, you can survive personal finance. Welcome to the Foxhole.
It's Wednesday once again, which means it's time to welcome you back into the Fiscal Foxhole, the podcast about military money that is never artificial and rarely intelligent. I'm your host for today, Rob Moore, recovering from my heat injuries from the 4th of July, and facing me from the other side of the foxhole is Omen Kwalvog, who is probably recovering from his injuries from fireworks that he bought that were maybe too large for his yard or backyard.
We didn't even get a chance to fire any fireworks off. It was raining that night. I mean, it was still over 1,000 degrees and raining. So I don't know how that actually works out.
Well, it was quite a show. We did go down, watch it. It was crazy. More of that later. We'll talk about that. But you did a run, and then you did a float trip, all that. And you survived. I could only imagine when I was outside on the mall at the 50 states or the state fair thing, we lasted maybe 2 hours before we tapped out. But I thought about you floating on a river in that heat. That must have been brutal.
It actually wasn't that bad. Up in the Shenandoah, we're covered by trees the whole time. On the trail run we went on to, we found a waterfall. Actually found two waterfalls with pools below. So we just jumped to the pool, got cooled down, and then continued on with our run. And then floating down the river. So apparently the river was not quite full. And so when we showed up and they said, hey, you want to do tubes, that's going to take you probably about 5 hours to go. And we're like, 5 hours? Oh, God. They said, but if you do rafting, it'll take you more like 3. We said, we like that option. So we did rafts.
That's fantastic. You found a unique way to celebrate the 4th. Yeah, like I said, I was downtown suffering in the heat with my family. They were troopers. We made it all the way to the end. We had a great view of the fireworks. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. It was a total win. But yeah, the temperatures and the rain coming in. Oh my goodness, it was rough.
I was legitimately thinking about you while you were out there, and just wondering what level of heat casualty were you? I mean, was this just like blood boiling, or was this heat stroke, or like were you just out?
This type that's the zombie type that you're barely conscious, but you're alive and you're walking around. I tell you what, the flyovers made it worth it. Kind of kept our attention. It was really cool. Yeah, it was all the Marine. Awesome. I sent you the picture of the Marine flyover. That was really sweet. But yeah, we got back to the hotel room. We spent a few hours cooling off, and then we were back out for the fireworks that evening, which was pleasant. But the 4th now behind us. That was a lot of fun. We're marking the nation's 250th. We have some other things to look forward to. The World Cup's still going on, right?
Well, I mean, as of this podcast, for some people, it's still going on. But speaking of the 4th, it is the 4th stage of the Tour de France, which you don't actually know this until right now. But I've got streaming right over here on this other screen while we record our podcast.
Good thing I'm hosting.
That's right.
No, like most true Americans, I only watched when Lance Armstrong was in the Tour de France, and then after that I stopped watching. But that's cool. Well, I'll try not to bother you too much on this recording.
Yeah, you're gonna hold this down for me. So
yeah, right. Well, while you're enjoying the Tour de France, I will tease today's episode. Today, we're talking about military retirement. We're back to business. The fun of the 4th aside, we're back to business. We're going to talk about military retirement, which I know we've talked about before multiple times, and we will again. But this one is uniquely themed in a way that we're focusing more on the options that we face. And sometimes, when you get out of the military, retire, a lot of times you're in that 40-year window, right? The 37 to 52, that kind of age range, where it's probably too young to stop doing anything. And also the income that comes from a pension, disability, and then future Social Security might not be enough to sustain you for the rest of your life financially. So you're met with this really unique experience where your income has decreased, but it hasn't gone away. You still have this income and the support and benefits, but then you have the desire to work more. You're not done working. And also you do have probably some income need if your kids are teenagers or college age, or your lifestyle requires that you keep earning income. So now you have options, but sometimes that can feel a little intimidating.
Rob, I love this. I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while now because we get to talk about some of the very challenges, but they're good challenges, right? When we say that the world's your oyster when it comes to choosing the career that you want to do after the military, it's a pretty stinking big oyster, right? There's a lot to choose from, and it can actually cause you to go into some kind of paralysis by analysis. Right. So the easy button is actually to go into government contracting work. And again, we've said this on previous episodes that is not we're not downplaying that career path. Like if you choose to go that route, that's quite all right. We're just saying there are other options that you can choose from. So now we get to go into in this episode how you might actually go about choosing that, which this is my favorite.
This will be a good one. I like the term you use, paralysis by analysis, which I think is seated in another kind of term that I use called the paradox of opportunity. When we're faced with opportunity, sometimes it can feel like a burden. Like, well, I have this opportunity to pursue something else, and I'm supported by this pay and benefits that I have, but it can feel like a burden where most people don't even have this opportunity. They're just like, I just got to keep hammering away at the job and the career that I've already set up for myself because I got to make it to that retirement age. And now you've been handed this gift of possibility, which can feel like a burden. So we're going to dive into that and try to reframe and reshift how we absorb this, how we digest this time in our lives in retirement. But before we do that, we've got some business to take care of, starting off with this week in military history. This week in military history is actually 3 weeks of military history, all from the week of July 13th, and from different dates from 44, 47, and 1950, all about women in the U.S. military. We'll start with the first one, July 14th, 1944, when the first Women's Army Corps contingent arrived in Normandy, France, following the D-Day invasion, women serving in a combat theater as part of the broader Allied effort in Europe. The second one, 3 years later, July 18th, 1947, when Colonel Florence Abbey Blanchfield became the first woman to receive a regular U.S. Army commission. Blanchfield was an Army nurse from West Virginia, and up to that point, women had only been eligible for reserve commissions, not a permanent regular one. And finally, on July 13th, 1950, the Women's Reserve of the U.S. Marine Corps was mobilized for the first time as the Korean War pulled reservists back into active service.
Rob, I love this moment in history. You know, I'm sure you have as well, your experiences. But for me personally, I've served alongside some of the smartest, hardest working women in the Marines, Air Force, Navy, Army. Like, I love the fact that it took some courage, right? Some courage from women back in history to enter the force in a way that paved the path for women to do what they are doing in the military force today. So this is really cool.
Amen. Yeah, and as you talk about that, I think about the ladies that I worked with in my Army career. The unit would have folded. So, if without them. So think about that. One, God rest her soul, who's not with us anymore. That I think about often. But anyway, yeah. Thank you to the women in their history of service to the U.S. Armed Forces. And now into today's headline. Today's headline comes to us courtesy of Amy C. Arnott, CFA, from Morningstar, and she writes an article titled, "Should You Reinvest Dividends? Not Always." A brief sum of the article here: reinvesting dividends is the default setting for most brokerage and retirement accounts, and it's usually the right call when you're building wealth. But Morningstar makes the case that for people at or near retirement, automatic reinvestment can work against you. It can overweight positions that are already too big, complicate your tax situation, and quietly funnel cash you already need for living expenses back into the market instead of your pocket. Okay, a lot to get into here because Amy's talking about a few different things and conflating a lot of them, and they're somewhat related, but I have some points to make maybe a little bit later. But before we talk about that, Oman, first, let's just talk about dividends. Like, what are dividends, and what's the idea of dividend reinvesting or dividend investing?
Yeah, so as we get into this, I think it's important to at least acknowledge some of the internet fights that go on over what you should do with dividends and dividend stocks and that line of investing, that's not necessarily what we're getting into today. It's really just talking through the concept of what are dividends, why would you reinvest them, and why wouldn't you? In this case, you have a company that has at end of the year profits. They have two choices. They are either going to take those profits and reinvest it right back into the company itself, or they are going to spit it out into cash. And that is what you're going to get as a dividend from the company.
Right. It's the difference between growth and value. That's in a whole nother episode, but in a nutshell, that's what that means. If you buy a growth stock, it means the company's keeping the profits and you're hoping for the value of the stock to grow. By the value stocks, like you said, the dividends are going to come to you as a shareholder. So a lot of times investors, they prefer one over the other for different reasons. I have something for that later on. I got a soapbox ready to go. But when it comes to retirement, the idea is with dividend investing that if you buy more of the value side, the value stocks that are spraying off those dividends regularly, it can feel like income, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's the essence of the article, honestly, is like, and I even think of my own parents as they have stocks that spit out dividends into cash. In my conversations with them, the comfort that they get from the cash just appearing in their taxable brokerage account from dividends, not really understanding necessarily that they, if they had those dividends reinvested back into those stocks, the value of those stocks would actually grow, giving them access a little bit, they'd have to sell those stocks, but still giving them access to the value of those stocks as they grow.
Yeah, it feels like income. And that's why a lot of retirees do this. And a lot of times I've heard retirees talk about like shifting more towards value side of investing when they hit the retirement age, because it feels like income, right? And I think basically reading between the lines of the example you just said, it sounds like they are kind of along that same mindset where they're getting these dividends and they've gone ahead and done the task of switching off the automatic reinvesting. So for you and me in our investing, I assume you have dividends reinvested, right? For your
Not
accounts.
always. Not always.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
I meant for you personally.
Oh, for me personally?
Dividends? Yeah.
Are you asking me such a personal question on this podcast? Are you taking dividends?
Come on, bro. We got disclaimers.
No. So quite frankly, for unwinding some positions and accounts, I don't necessarily want dividends reinvested back into the same stocks I'm trying to get rid of. So there are some things that I do turn off dividend reinvesting because I would rather get it back in the cash so I can put it elsewhere. So that is a tactic I use to try to unwind taxable accounts. But for the most part, I keep, like, when I finally get a portfolio to the place that I want it to be in, I'm turning dividend reinvestment on purpose into those specific accounts because we want the growth out of that.
Yeah. A couple points to that. First, just returning back to the point I was trying to make, it sounds like the people you talked about, who was the relative you referenced? I apologize.
My mom and dad.
Your mom and dad. I was listening, I promise. I don't have a TV on over here.
Do you have the Tour de France on right now?
I do. I promise you I do. Hey, when it comes to football season, I might be distracted. But they've already done the task that Amy warns about here. They've switched off the automatic reinvesting and they're receiving it as cash. That, again, some retirees like that. You break up a really good point. But I would argue a lot of times the dividend reinvesting, if you've got a portfolio assigned to the account, the dividend reinvesting actually will help keep your portfolio balanced. Because if you get dividends that are paying cash into the account, guess what? Like, you can use that cash to reinvest into the other assets in your portfolio that might have underperformed over the year. You can kind of bring your portfolio back into balance. So there's a lot to unpack here. And she implies a few other things. She talks about, the tax situation, or quietly funneling cash, outside of what you might need. And she's implying that you might face some different tax things, which I want to talk about in a minute, or move cash into something else, which you implied, moving cash away from maybe what you intended to use it for. So instead of taking the cash to use to support yourself, all of a sudden you find it reinvested into stocks.
Yes.
Okay, nothing else. I wanted to give you an opportunity because I got my soapbox ready to go, and I'm going to put it here.
I know you do.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm actually just sitting back waiting for it. I've got my bag of popcorn here ready to go.
Okay, good. You talked about the Reddit forums that people debate about dividend investing, which means buying the value stocks that are spraying off dividends, that are spitting out regular dividends to be used in any way you want. You can reinvest them or you can take them as cash and use it however you want.
I need to interject here on your soapbox.
Yeah.
Because what is the argument really? And I think, honestly, for me, my takeaway from the internet arguments are that in some form or fashion, people believe that stocks that spit off dividends are more valuable than stocks that don't. Right. And it's a misunderstanding of the fact that when you get a dividend, the value of that stock goes down by an equal amount. So it's literally a dollar for dollar.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to my soapbox. Thank you.
Okay.
Joining my soapbox today is Omen. No, you're making my point for me. Like, I just don't understand that we've fallen, even if you're a retiree or you're an investor in the middle age or young, why we're separating the idea of dividend and just general growth. Thank you for the tease, by the way. Usually when dividends hit, the value of the stock drops on the ex-dividend date. Value of the stock drops by that same amount because the value of the company inherently drops because the cash is being paid out. Okay?
That's right.
So you get the dividend, that's the value of the stock. What happens if they don't pay a dividend?
The value of the stock doesn't it goes up. It just continues to do what it's doing. That's right.
So the value of the stock either sustains or goes up because the company is profitable. That's the most important thing. Is the company profitable that we're investing in? If they give us a dividend or the value of the stock price goes up, do we really care? I don't care because return is return. There's two types of return that we usually get from stocks: growth and dividends. And guess what? Both have tax advantages and disadvantages. Break that down real quick. If you've got a qualified dividend or a long-term capital gain, you're probably going to be paying 15% on the gain or the dividend. And if you've done some really great tax magic with your before you get to retirement, you might pay zero.
Maybe zero. Yeah.
Yeah. You're probably not paying max 20, but that's if you're making a ton of money. But you're probably going to be paying 15% on that. Worst case scenario, okay, it's a non-qualified dividend or it's a short-term capital gain. Guess what? You're going to be taxed as regular income. So if you're the 12% tax bracket, 20% tax bracket, that's what it's going to be charged as. It's like there's nothing punitive about this. Those are the two differences. But have you noticed in both of those is dividend and gain, either on the good side tax-wise or the bad side? There's the same thing. It's money in your pocket, whether it's the stock value or when you receive it as income. There could be an argument made in a brokerage account, like when it's taxed. Like with gain, it's taxed when you sell it, and dividend is taxed when you receive it. So there's an argument there, sure. But again, return is return. Focus on the overall return. I want to make one more point about this. And this is only within a brokerage account, right? That it's a taxable brokerage account where you have to worry about the tax consequences for this. If you're in a retirement account, like an IRA, 401k, TSP, if you're on the traditional side, guess what? All of it's going to be taxed as income, whether it's a qualified dividend, gain, long-term gain, short-term gain, non-qualified. It's all taxed as income when you take it out. And guess what? On the other side, on the Roth IRA, none of it is taxed, whether it's a dividend gain, qualified dividend, or none of it is. So I think in the effort to try to find the edge in investing, like find the thing that's going to unlock this magic retirement where you're like, oh, I found the key. It's dividends. I think this is just such fertile ground to try to find something that you think is going to provide you something that's different than everybody else or better or provide some advantage or just make you feel better about it. When in reality, we're just talking about return.
I'm going to not be so passionate about it. But I will say in agreement that if you're receiving dividends and you think that your stock is more valuable because you receive dividends, that's not necessarily the case. But if you are doing this as a tactic to receive cash on a somewhat regular basis that you can then turn around and use towards other things other than investing, and you already know that going in, then great, do that, because it's, again, it's kind of the easier button. It's a few less mouse clicks. It's you're still going to end up paying taxes on this equally, or maybe not so equally, but probably not so significantly different that it's going to make a huge difference in your financial well-being or your plan. So just know what you're doing when you go into this, that you're thinking through this in a way that just makes sense and aligns with reality.
I would still argue that there's no difference between a company that experiences 6% growth on the year and a company that spits out a 6% dividend on the year.
I don't think there's no difference, right?
Right.
But it's, do you choose to sell the stock at some point to get the cash to use for the thing that is not investment related, or do you just let it spit off a dividend, give you the cash, and now you use that cash to buy the thing that's not an investment? It's a little bit of like I said, a few less mouse clicks. The cash just appears in your taxable brokerage, and now you use it.
Yeah, I think that's the angle that most retirees come at it with. Is when they open up their account to take the money that they need out of their retirement accounts, I need the cash. The cash is already sitting there so long as they've done what your mom and dad did, but they're not reinvesting dividends. So all of a sudden, this cash reserve builds up. So it's like, okay, the cash is there. That's what I use. So I understand that. But again, I would say, it doesn't matter. It's like getting your allowance from dad versus mom. It's the same thing. And so long as you're, like I said, the dividends and the long-term capital gains can be taxed the same way. So you're right. It takes a couple more clicks, but maybe that's our job to do for our clients, is make sure that the cash is there when they need it. But again, just don't get too caught up. I would just say don't get too caught up in one or the other. Just look at the overall return. Remember, stocks have an overall return, and that includes gain and that includes dividends. Don't get too caught up in this. All right, soapbox rant complete, and silly little argument number one done for the day. I hope we have a few more in store for us. But with all that behind us, let's jump into the meat of the episode. As I teased in the beginning of the episode, today we're talking about the opportunities that arise when we face military retirement. What comes next? What are we going to do? How are we going to replace this income? But we also have this other income that's going to support us along the way, which builds opportunity. And as we teased, paralysis by analysis, or the paradox of opportunity. So we've laid out here a nice little outline of different things we want to talk about. Nested within those points in the outline are further clarifying points that we want to bounce back and forth off each other. So I think you've done a great job here outlining this. We've got three main topics that we're going to jump into, each with, like I said, with the subtopics. So point number one to get us rolling along here is the idea of retiring into something. Right, finding what's next. I know we've talked about this before. We're not retiring from the military. I mean, technically we are, but the idea is we reframe the way we think about it into retiring into something rather than retiring from the military. Within this, there's some typical concerns. All right, let's start with those. We got a list here of typical concerns when we're talking about retiring into something and finding what's next. The first concern is the idea of, what if I don't find something I like to do?
Yeah. That is such a big concern. I think this goes back to even the framework of retiring into something versus retiring from something, because the mindset is when you retire into something that actually implies that you're looking forward to the thing that you were going to retire into in the first place, which means that to answer this question, what if I don't find something I like to do? You're actually looking at this question 2 to 3 years before you exit the military. So when you think through that process and the fact that this is going to happen 2 to 3 years prior to you retiring from the military, now all of a sudden it kind of changes the framework in which you try to solve this problem, in that you can start to set up some milestones of just trying some things out. What are some hobbies you like? What are some types of books you like to read, and what is the subject matter of those books? You know, I said in my own career path that my wife was the one who identified financial planning as a passion for me, that it was in front of me. I was doing the thing. I just didn't realize it was a career model. I had no idea that it was an option. She was the one that pointed that out to me. So there are maybe people in your life or hobbies you like to do. And we have a fellow podcaster, Benjamin Brandt, who has the Retirement Starts Today podcast. And I love that podcast. He talks to people who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, already into retirement. But really the concept that he explains as people start to look at what they are retiring into is go back to that time frame when you were a teenager. What were the things that you really wanted to get into, but you just didn't have the finances to do it at the time? And so you took a job to make sure that you could put a roof over your head and food on the table. Go back to that time when you were a teenager. What were those things that you were interested in? Now you've actually got the finances to do it, and start to explore those areas.
When I was in high school, the things I was interested in that I didn't have the finances to pursue was girls. So point
I'm not
made,
even gonna
but
crack into that.
Not a lucrative option for retirement. No,
There are career options. We're just not going to talk about them here.
That's pretty lucrative ones. No, I think you framed that really well, because you're talking about what does your heart and your mind fall to. That's exactly what I did. Megan was astute enough to see it in you, but I knew it from even when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad back in college. So to your point about being young, what did you think about? But the whole time in my career, my heart and my mind always fell towards personal finance, just thinking about this and really enjoying it. So it was already there. It was kind of a ready-made place for me to grow from. And it also turns out that the other skill I developed was being hard-headed and opinionated. So perfect fertile ground for this podcast to grow, of course. But yeah, that's a really good starting point. Like, what do you think about all the time? What do you care about? What were you passionate about when you were young? You know, aside from being a Major League Baseball pitcher, like what were the real things that you were worried about, or what were the real things that you were focused on and interested in? Okay. I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about each of these. Yes. So I'll just move us along. The second typical concern is the idea of, what if I think I find something and then a year or two I find out I don't actually like it?
Yeah, this is so hard, right? Because you have maybe some opportunities in the military to dabble into the career paths that you think you want to try. And it just gives you a glimpse. Even if you skill bridge, right? Like you do an internship through a skill bridge, it gives you a glimpse into a particular career path, or even an actual job that you might try out. And you think, yeah, I think this will fit quite well. And then you actually get into it for a year or two and you think, oh man, I've made a grave error. What do I do? How do I shift? And I think one of the issues that we have as military retirees is that we're not really used to shifting careers. Just by definition, you've been doing this for at least the last 20 years. So it actually, shifting careers, shifting jobs, that's kind of new territory. Like, sure, you PCS'd every 2 to 3 years, but you still got paid by the military on the 1st and the 15th. So that didn't really change. When you're shifting careers in the civilian workplace, you are shifting paychecks too, shifting benefits and all that.
Do you have a Marine Corps tattoo, by the way? It's going to support my point.
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, I promise this is going somewhere. This kind of proves my point. It's like when you're in the military, you have this allegiance to it. So I'm going to kind of talk to your point about identifying with what you're doing. In the military, we have this identity where obviously the military is not going to let us leave until it says it's okay, but we're also meeting it halfway with our buy-in with our servant's heart into the armed forces. And there's a weird thing when we retire, like, is the Army going to be okay without me? I can't possibly leave at 22 or 23 years because I still have stuff to do. Yeah, they're going to be fine. And the same goes for whatever company you work for. If you try something out, not only should you feel supported by the pension, possible disability, that you kind of have support income to encourage you maybe go try something else out if it's not working out. Also, don't feel so much allegiance to what you do. They're going to be fine without you. So this is the time in your life you really need to be putting yourself first and what you want to do. All right. Concern number 3. What if it doesn't bring in the income I thought it would?
Yeah, this one takes a little bit of pre-planning, right? And Rob, for you and I, as we got into this career field, I don't know about you, but I felt like I had a hard time trying to figure out what is a typical amount of salary that somebody as a financial planner can expect. And it turns out it's actually kind of all over the place. Right. And so it does take a little bit of research on your end to determine what is the pay scale, what's kind of the lower and upper limits of that pay scale. And if you decide to do something completely different, completely unrelated to what your skill set is in the military, you can just go ahead and assume that you're going to get the bottom of that pay scale because you're going to have to work right back up again. So just like what we do and suggest and recommend in podcasts and with our clients and things like that, take the conservative view. What's your pension going to look like? Do you have any other income sources? And then take whatever that lowest amount of the pay scale, add that and see, does this meet my need? Like, will this get me by? But don't forget that the civilian pay scale is different from the military in that you can probably count on pay raises and maybe even some bonuses throughout your years as you continue on, perhaps at even a faster scale than what you would expect in the military, where you're spending 5.5 or 6 years as a captain, or 5 years as a major, whatever that is. I forget what the average is, but it's a long time. You probably won't go that long without a pay raise in the civilian sector.
When we talk about finding lucrative careers after retirement, I don't know if our listeners should listen to what we did or from us, because
So we took a vow of poverty. Is that what it was?
Pretty much. Like we were like, hey, I'll try something completely new. We did go interview for jobs. You're like, oh, wow. Okay. So this is kind of a modest beginning salary because we're starting out in the career field, right? And then we looked over there like, oh, look at that. Look at the money pit of entrepreneurship in the first 2 years of like losing money hand over fist. Like, that looks great. Let's do that instead. I do one thing to add on to this. If you do decide to switch career fields and you go out and you're interviewing, just remember you're 45 years old. All right, be humble. You probably need to get ahead of it. Like I went to a few interviews and talked to some people, and honestly, they looked at me and like, hey, you led how many soldiers? You're how old? You're so far established in your career, and now you're interested in this kind of starting level position in wealth management. And it was a discomfort from their end. They're like, we don't know what to do with you, man. We're not quite sure. I'm talking to people that are like 28 years old. And
Yeah.
They're like, I'm going to hire you. But so then it kind of reframed my perspective. If I was going to do that, I was like, I got to kind of get out ahead of it. And like, look, I'm eager to kind of learn and start and learn this thing. And I'm okay because I've got income, stable income coming in. I'll be all right. But fate had something else in mind for both of us. All right, moving on. The idea that I am at my peak earning years and you're telling me to give that up.
Maybe. Perhaps. How many times have we talked about this on the podcast, Rob? This idea that your income should not drive your life. It's the other way around. What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your spouse? What do you want to do with your kids? What are your life goals? And does it need the income that a peak earning year or 3 will bring in if you go take that contracting job, whereas now the alternative is you take the job, you get the income, great, but you die with $10 million and you didn't get the opportunities you wanted with your kids when they were young enough for them to want you to be around.
I also want to bring up the fact that, remember, after you reach retirement years, the 20 year in, technically you're working for less. I do want to reframe this in a different way, because yes, you do have the comfort of the peak earning years that you're experiencing in the military, and you're going to be hitting those peak earning years after you hit 20. You're going to be hitting those higher ranks, and you're going to get comfortable with the income. But also remember, there's opportunity there, because the pension that waits you on the other side of retirement, it might be half. Add in VA disability, might be a substantial part of what you're currently earning in the military. So technically, if you look at it a certain way, you're working for the difference between what you're going to get and what you're currently getting. That's what you're currently working for. So if you look at this not so much as being weighed down by the higher level of military wages that you're currently receiving, and rather set free by the idea that you're still going to be supported and that what you're currently working for is that difference, can be a good way to reframe it or inspire you to pursue other things outside the military and in retirement. Moving on to our next point. What if I need income right away and don't have the runway to explore first?
Yeah. Again, valid question. Probably one aimed a little bit more at somebody who did not retire from the military, somebody not receiving a pension. But this is going to require some work. I kind of go back to the old nights and weekends, right? Like, you might have to take a job, a job job, to get some income in that would then allow you the flexibility to do research on the career that you want to do, you want to shift into at a later point. So maybe you're doing some college classes nights and weekends. You're maybe doing some internships where you're not telling your current boss about those internships, but just right. But you're strategically going about this in a way that you have to put a roof over your head. You have to put food on the table, but you still have 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, and you can use some of that time to explore other avenues that you might want to get into.
Yeah, you're probably going to have to grind if this is you. A teenage mindset will help you here. Hey, if you want to buy the Xbox, you might have to mow a few lawns, right? If you want to be able to feed your family, you might have to take a job. Something you wouldn't have considered regularly at your age and stature in the military, but the idea is that it's a bridge to the next thing that you're trying to build. So it might take a little bit of humility and also really realizing what your situation is. We talk about awareness all the time, or at least you do, and I think it's a wonderful point. Because if you're unaware and then you face that bridge where a job would really help get you to the next thing, then the alternative is you're keeping your lifestyle the same and you're just going into debt, right? We're eating up. Yeah, the credit cards are jumping higher and savings is dwindling, all in the effort of like, well, I'm just going to get to the next thing. Well, challenges are abundant. And so just make sure spending your time wisely, humble yourself a little bit, find the thing that'll get you there. This episode is brought to you by the Military Financial Advisors Association.
MFAA is a global network of independent, fee-only fiduciary financial advisors who specialize in serving military families.
And we're not just highlighting it. Oman and I are members ourselves, so we know firsthand what they stand for.
That's right. Every member of MFAA is either active duty, a veteran, or a military spouse, so they truly understand the unique financial challenges that come with military life.
Plus, every advisor must hold or be actively pursuing the CFP designation, which is the gold standard in financial planning.
But let's put that together. When you choose an advisor with MFAA, you are getting a professional who won't sell you a product, who knows the military life, and will plan using your hard-earned military benefits.
Whether you're navigating a step out of the military after 4 years, a military retirement, or a transition into a work-optional lifestyle, MFAA advisors speak your language.
Visit militaryfinancialadvisors.org to find an advisor who fits your mission.
MFAA, real advice, real experience.
This advertisement is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. All investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Information and opinions provided within the Fiscal Foxhole do not necessarily reflect official positions or opinions of the Military Financial Advisors Association or its members. Consult a qualified financial professional before making any financial decisions.
I like this next point. I want to let you vamp on this because this is you. This got you written all over it. What if contracting or government work actually is the right call for me? How do I know it's the right choice and not just the easy one?
I want to be careful here, right? Because we're spending almost an entire episode talking about alternatives to government contracting or working in the government after a military career as if it's some bad career choice. It's not. It's just not for everybody. And the point of this whole podcast is to at least get your brain clicking a little bit about what alternatives might look like for you and the lifestyle that would potentially enable that sometimes life as a contractor doesn't allow you to do. I've spoken to many of my personal friends and or just acquaintances who have gotten into this contracting lifestyle where they're traveling all the time, they're away from their families. It's very much a high op-tempo military lifestyle, just without the uniform and the physical fitness tests. So if that is truly what you desire, then go do that. Like if you're passionate about how you fit into that world, because another thing that I want to make sure that we're careful about here is that when you go off on your own or you go and do something completely different, number one, I don't know about you, Rob, but I've never gotten a single phone call from my old workplaces saying, "Hey, Q, can you remind me how this thing is done? Like, we really need you." Like, not one phone call. So that's number one. But number two is I kind of start to reflect back on the things that I miss the most. It's the people, right? Well, if you get into contracting in a very similar career field as what you were in, well, you're going to see the people. It's a high likelihood that you're going to continue to interact with the people. Even when I went back for that change of command a couple of weeks ago, it was great to see the people. I love the people. So yeah, it's not always a bad thing. What you should work through as you consider contracting work, government work as the thing for you is, does it still enable the lifestyle that you actually desire? Does it allow, like if also spending family time is important to you, but contracting doesn't enable that, then well, maybe contracting isn't for you. And if it starts to become a prioritized list between family and work, that's a deep conversation. That's a really deep conversation.
Yeah, that's what you just retired from. You don't have to have that imbalance anymore. You don't have to have that discussion anymore because the military's gone, and for good reason, they challenged you on that balance because sometimes they need you more than your family needs you, right? So, but that's gone. You don't have to face that anymore. So if you're making that decision, it's a conscious one now. Like, yeah, I choose to go back into this contracting job that resembles exactly what I did in the military. So I guess it begs the question, before you do that, take a really good moment to think about, do I really love what I'm doing right now? Am I happy doing? You had this opportunity. You had the opportunity to say, you can keep doing what you're doing right now, go home on a weekend, take off the uniform, put on a suit, come back in, start collecting a pension, and then a government contractor wage on top of that, right? Super lucrative. But you did take the step back and think, well, do I really, really love this? This is the balance I'm looking for. Is this what I want to do?
If you took one thing away from this podcast episode, is find your purpose. What is your purpose? Because if going to work as a contractor or a government professional provides you the purpose you feel you provide to this earth, then it's going to be difficult to step away from that unless you can redirect that purpose somewhere else. Our purpose is in educating people and serving clients the best that we know how, be involved in church, to grow roots in our community. Like, we have found other ways to funnel our purpose somewhere else other than the military, which gives you a way to step away from contracting without it feeling like something that needs you.
If you were in the foxhole with us right now, you could see Owen and I are holding hands. It's a really good moment. But it's perfectly said. Well, you just nailed it. When we're in the military, a lot of the focus is on how we're spending our money and is it aligned with our values. When you get to this point, I guarantee you, all right, because this is what you feel is what I feel. It's more about how are we spending our time, right? Because the value, the pension, the disability, all the other standard streams of income that we have supports that opportunity, right? So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your own personal experience with this. When I saw this on there, I'm like, hey, man, this is Omen's jam. Let him ride with that. So real quick before we move on to our next point overall is just a couple of ideas. Explore, meditate, spend time meditating. We talked earlier in the episode about what does my mind fall to? What does my heart fall to when I'm not focusing on what I do for the military? What's important to me? Explore everything, skill traits, teaching, entrepreneurship, if you so dare, coaching, real estate, tech certifications. You're not too old to learn. Go back to college. You and I both got the CFP. We took a couple years, got it done. Management, personnel management. Did you like working with people in the military? Did you like managing them? Every company's looking for managers, right? Amazon, Home Depot, your coffee shop, anywhere, right? So don't cross things out until you start maybe circling some things. Do that first and then maybe weed out like, yeah, the fact that I love this idea maybe means that this one's a non-starter. So real quick, the path that we both chose awfully lucrative long-term, right? So what about taking the passion path that is not currently lucrative? Entrepreneurship certainly wasn't, but also the long-term path is not also as financially lucrative. How do you weigh the passion versus that?
I love it, honestly, because it breeds contentment. That to me feels like a very content lifestyle. Yeah. I got friends right now who they're minimalists, right? Like they could be in a high paying job if they wanted to, but they choose to have events in their life that are free or very low cost. They're spending time with their kids, and Their projections don't go all that high, and that's okay with them because they are living a lifestyle that is important to them to focus on family first.
All right, moving on to the next point. We have a point number 2, point number 3, but these are shorter than the first one. The first one was intentionally long because there was a lot to talk about there. So these next two should move along a little quicker. But the next one's super important. Just spend some time talking about. We have 4 other points within this, but I think we can just talk about it because it's such a great idea. Point number 2, the floor. The floor we talked about throughout the whole first half of this podcast. The pension, the disability, and eventually Social Security stacking. That income floor creates opportunity.
So on my client portal dashboard, I have one. It's a small box. It doesn't take up a whole lot of room, but it is one of the favorite text boxes that I actually present to clients because it shows them what their guaranteed income is once they retire without disability, because most of the time we don't know disability until after you retire. So it shows them that guaranteed income and what their expenses are today. And then I move to age 70 when we have their projected pension, still no disability, and Social Security claiming what that income guaranteed looks like and their projected expenses. And I show them what that difference is. And like I said, it's just a couple of numbers. It's not a very big box, but it is eye-opening to people. Yeah.
It's a cheat code. I've said that many times. It's like a cheat code. When you drop a disability or a pension into a retirement plan or into a financial plan long-term, it creates so much opportunity because it's hard to break it. Because a lot of times, especially with the health of a military pension that is significant, I know it's not what you're earning now. I get that. But I'll tell you what, it's sure hard to go poor with it. It's hard to fail. Yeah. I mean, you would really have to screw your life up financially. We're talking like bankruptcy and terrible debt and awful choices and you name it to really screw with that. If you're just living a normal lifestyle, worst case scenario is you start to build a little bit of debt because you're overspending. You just adjust and you make an adjustment, or you find the employment that supports it, of course. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the floor, which is this pension. We've spoke about disability before as a possible throwaway or possibly included possible throwaway, but that's just the reality of it. We don't know. Like, how do you mitigate that, especially now where it seems like people are kind of sniffing around disability and the way the ratings are being done, that we could see some real change in the next handful of years?
Yeah. So, for me, I take the conservative approach. I just, explained that I use numbers that are based on a non-disability rating whatsoever. And so that is the most conservative approach you could probably take in that, okay, so I know that the income that I need to actually pull in for the career is somewhere between my guaranteed income and what my expenses are right now. There are only 2 levers you can pull there. That is to make more or spend less. So if you can figure that out however you want. Now, when you get out of the military, you are not going to necessarily know your disability rating for, could be a couple weeks, could be a couple months after you depart the service. So there might be a plan in place where I've seen this go a couple different ways. Number one, maybe you have diligently saved up an emergency fund that will cash flow you the difference for a year or so. Like, it gives you space to, number one, decompress from the military and start to come down off your outlook PTSD. Or you can go ahead and take that higher paying job or whatever it is for a year or so with the plan in your head. I wouldn't tell this to your new boss, but with a plan in your head that you're going to shift once you figure out what that disability payment looks like.
Moving from the opportunity side that pension provides, let's move to the investing side that the pension provides. And I know if you're listening, you're like, well, what do you mean by that? The pension's the pension. It has nothing to do with investing. Well, you and I, we see that a little bit differently than that. We actually do see, or I don't want to speak too much for you, but I definitely see the pension as part of your investment portfolio. There's a reason for this. It's because when we invest for anything, when we invest for a new house, we invest for marriage of our children, or we invest for anything, the idea is that there's a certain goal in the future that we need a certain amount of money to support. Retirement's the most common goal for investing. That's one that everyone's got to do. So we're putting money aside every month. We're trying to build to some number to get us to a point where we can sustain ourselves in retirement. What's a pension do? It sustains you in retirement. Why would we not consider that part of our investment portfolio? And people say, well, it's not going to go up or down. It's not going to, do anything. It's just there and it has nothing to do. It doesn't require me to put anything into it. So it's not really investment. Yeah, I know, but it is serving actually the most crucial need you need in retirement income, which is stability, like the most stability you could possibly expect. And it's part of your retirement income. So I don't understand why you would just exclude that entirely and then treat the balance you need, the difference, the delta between what you need and what that pension is providing as something that's like what a normal person would be treating their portfolio in a similar way. Because a normal person, when they're investing for their retirement, when they're getting close to that retirement age, they're trying to build in security and safety in their portfolio to try to pursue the unattainable thing that you've already got, which is a pension.
That's right.
So
that's right. That's why people buy annuities with their investments.
Right, exactly. So not only are they trying to get something they can't get, they'll actually pay hand over fist to an insurance company, lose money net overall in order to try to get that security that you're going to get. So, okay, I just said a lot of words that are probably confusing, but let me boil it down to what this really means. To me, when my client, if they got a government military pension, it means we can take more risk in their portfolio, right? We can take more because yes, their investments are going to go up and down quite a bit more, but the base it's built upon, because we're considering it as part of the portfolio, is as steady as it gets.
Yeah, their need is less. There's certainly less pressure on the investment portfolio.
Yeah,
well said.
Do you agree with that? Do you do that with a lot of your clients? Do you seek more risk when they have that pension base?
100%. I wrote a whole article on this. I think I mentioned that before. I think we've talked about this before.
I think we have. Yeah.
When we test for risk, it's not just the tolerance about what you think about the market and it going up and down, but the risk need is a significant part of this. When you're 65 and you don't have a pension, your need on your investment portfolio is much greater than your need when you have a pension and maybe disability. So you can afford to actually allow your investments to continue. Because when you retire, at 65, hopefully you've got another 30 years of life left to live that your investment portfolio has to support you. When you retire from the military at 45, good Lord, hopefully you have 55, 60 years still left of really good life that your investment portfolio can support you, but you just don't need as much support from it.
Rounding out the discussion with point number 3, just some things we want to talk about in hindsight as we've seen people pursue the next chapter after retirement, what we call the little R, which I don't think we've mentioned yet, but that's what we commonly call it. What are the mistakes that blow up the plan? Let's talk about that. We talk about all the opportunity and things you should do, should consider, good practices, but in hindsight, there's some things that can really destroy you. I think the most common one, and I think this will blow up your plan, whether you're in the military, in retirement, or little R, your next career, is not understanding your current lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awareness button, right? We need an awareness button on this pod. We just need it all the time. What are you spending? What's your lifestyle? What do you need? What do you need to sustain yourself? If you don't know that and you don't do the calculation okay, well, this is what I'm making, this is what I need, and this is what I'm going to get outside of retirement. If you haven't done that basic math and looked at what's going on, then I'm not going to say you're absolutely going to fail, but hey, the ground is ripe, it's fertile and fertilized for you to fail. Other than that, you also have different tax treatments for different things. A lot of times this actually tends to be more beneficial. Sometimes it's a good surprise. You worry so much about BAH, BAS going away, but then now we find, your pension is a lower taxable income than what you got in the military. Okay. And that's coming off the marginal tax, which is the highest tax dollars. So you actually might drop down into a lower tax bracket. So a little bit of tax savings there, inherently built into lower income. You do get some state benefits with the pension sometimes. The VA disability, again, if you get it, it's tax-free. So there's some tax benefits in retirement, which is surprising. But again, awareness. One more time, be aware of that situation before you get into it.
I think the biggest trap there for people is if they do go into a high-paying job and now they've stacked that high-paying job on top of a taxable retirement pension.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where I've seen it really hit people. Is that next contracting job. They just didn't expect that instead of earning, with BAH and BAS gone, and they've now replaced it with a high-paying job, they've basically gone from somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 150,000 in taxable income to upwards of 300,000. Like they've almost doubled it, and that will really surprise people on their tax bill following the retirement year.
I got two examples. One current client, one prospect that did that. Like they went to the contracting out of the military, they retired with, and they didn't adjust any W-4s, or they didn't coordinate them, right? They told one W-4 like, oh yeah, I'm married and that's my situation.
This is the only job I have.
Yeah, married filing jointly, and that's it. And then I told the other job, married filing jointly, and they both treat those marginal tax brackets the same on the low end. Well, guess what? Theoretically, one's going to take all of it, and the other one's going to be stacked on top of it. So that became a lesson for those folks and how to coordinate the W-4 filling those out. I want to hammer this point. I think it's really great. I think the biggest mistake you can make is treating the retirement date from the military when you're in your 40s like the finish line instead of starting out new. We've kind of messaged this throughout the entire episode, but I would say even when you retire from the next career or completely retire and you stop working, there's danger in treating anything in your life like the finish line until you hit the ultimate finish line.
Yeah, I mean, we literally just talked about this, that when you retire from the military, hopefully you actually have as many or maybe even more years left to go in your life than what you have lived to the point that you retired from the military, right? If you're 45 years old, you double that, that's 90 years old. You still got 45 years left to go, assuming you live a nice long life. So how you approach your finances shouldn't be like, well, I'm heading out to the pasture. I only got a couple more years to go, so I'm going to make the best of this and start spending all your money. No, it's, think about this from a lifespan aspect of how many more years do you expect to go, and how much further do your finances do you think need to support you and your family?
Aside from the dismal realization of your point that I'm more than halfway to 90 at this point. Thanks for that.
No comment.
Yeah.
No comment.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it is when you retire from either the military, when you graduate college, when you retire from the military, you retire from the second job, or you take on a new hobby when you're 80, the idea should be it's time to grow up. Like, it's time for me to grow. It's time for me to explore. It's time for me to expand. It's time for me to learn something different. It's time for me to reestablish that old hobby that I left long ago and see if there's still something there. It's always this perpetual growth until the finish line. And I just think your body, now I'm just editorializing completely, but like, I think there's health benefits to that, cognitive health, like you name it. There's so much benefit in just like, okay, what's the next thing to focus on and pursuing something with all your heart. Finally, before we jump into the game segment, we do have just a couple parting ideas here. And I think if you're listening to this, if you're in that window, that retirement window, this is probably really great. And you're probably very engaged in listening. I'm sure you are. But what if our listeners are kind of within that first 10 years of military service?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things to note here. Number one, if you're in that first 10 years of service, you're probably in BRS. And I say that because you might think that you have a little bit more flexibility to not go all the way to military retirement because you've got your match and your TSP, and maybe it's not as valuable to have the pension. Let me just be clear that even a 40% pension at 20 years is still a very valuable runway path for you. So if you decide, if you're on the fence about whether or not to stay in longer, just make sure that you're doing the math on that. The other thing is explore your paths. Like, don't be afraid to still continue to explore, like going back the tactics that we already said, like use what you thought of as a teenager as a way to start to engage in things that you might be interested in. But be careful. I do speak to other military members who are wanting to get into this career profession, and they're 5, 8, 10 years out. Yeah. And next thing you know, they're like, I really want to be a financial planner. And man, it is hard to have two masters, right? Like, you're going to love one and hate the other. Mm-hmm. And so soon enough, you will actually find yourself, if you're not careful, giving more attention and starting to resent the military for the years that you have left, that it's not allowing you to do this other career. So explore, but be careful.
I feel like I accidentally nailed that. And I do want to speak to that because I experienced that myself. I overlapped the last 2 years. I started the business because I knew it was going to lose a lot of money in the first 2 years, because they all do. All of these businesses do. So I decided, like, hey, I have got the time in the evenings and weekends to do this thing while also serving purposefully in my military career. Well, guess what? Eventually the growth does come. So then I found myself still being able to balance it out, still being able to spend time with my family. It was tough, but I got it done, and it was for a good reason. But I had this weird feeling sometimes where I would go to work and I would get buried in the purpose of what I was doing for the military. And then I would get home and I would almost like resent. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta crack the seal on what I have to do today for my business. And then I would feel kind of resentful, like, oh my gosh, I got to do this thing. But then I would get buried in that, right? Maybe I would have a day off from the military, like a comp day or something. And I would be really, working really super hard on the business and feeling awesome. And then I would get an email, from someone else at work, and they're, at the military side, and they're like, hey, could you send this over? We need a document or something. I'm like, oh, and I would resent that. It was really strange because I felt the purpose and the fulfillment on both, but obviously I'm not going to do both at the same time. But I did feel this really strange resentment for each of them, depending on which one I was doing. So again, I think I nailed it because I dovetailed right out, and it worked out perfectly, thank goodness. But yeah, be careful. If you started too early, not only that, but like, I mean, if you're 7 years out and you've got the CFP, and like, if you're doing this, man, like you're going to have some really tough decisions to face, because your success might be growing in the financial services or the next career, whatever it is, but the military still expects your full duty, right?
It's not just financial professionals. It's any other profession that you decide, like, what, I really want to be a truck driver. I really want to be you name the thing. It's going to be difficult if you start to put all of your energy into that one thing. You start to get really passionate about, like, I'm excited, I want to go do this, but I have to be in the military. Ooh, that's a tough place to be.
Danger ahead. Yeah, proceed with caution. This is a great episode. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this, because we've often talked about the financial balance of getting out of the military. We haven't talked so much about maybe how that coordinates with the values, and also maybe kind of like the anxiety, the paralysis by analysis, or the paradox of opportunity, right? We don't talk about how all that balances together. So I was really glad we were able to talk about that today. So with that behind us, it's time to stop holding hands and jump into the trivia segment. This is the weekly fun we always like to have, the shenanigans at the end of every episode, which today's trivia challenge between Omen and myself for the prize of Pride in a Cheap Trophy. We're keeping the scores, as we've mentioned before, behind lock and key until the end of the year, which hopefully we can inspire one lucky listener to guess the correct score between us, and also who won, how many Omen's got right, how many I've gotten wrong, for the prize of a very, very valuable handcrafted FiscalFoxhole t-shirt. So it is time to jump into the segment, and today Omen's got his question ready to go for me.
That's right. What kind of question do you actually ask about an episode like this? I actually had a little bit of a difficult time coming up with asking a question about life outside the military, careers outside the military, but I think I came up with one here. I think it's somewhat challenging. So you ready for this one?
That's a really thoughtful excuse that you're pre-planting for the absurd question that I'm sure you found.
Oh, I made sure it was obscure.
Perfect. Go for it.
All right. Rand built a tool that translates military job experience into civilian resume language for transitioning troops. What civilian-friendly phrase did it suggest for, quote, basic combat training? Was it A, handling work stress, B, team leadership under pressure, C, physical fitness training, or D, conflict resolution management? Evil laugh.
I'm leaning towards, what was B?
Team leadership under pressure.
It's got to be that. I love the other one. And the first one, I couldn't stop laughing after the first one. What was that again? What was the first one?
Handling work stress.
Yeah. That actually might be the most accurate one, because as you know, basic training, that was the whole idea. I mean, granted, you're learning some valuable things, but the idea is to push you to mental, physical limits to the point where you have to handle the stress that you've been provided. So I won't be surprised if it's A, with a kind of a clever tongue-in-cheek, but I'm going to go with B and try my luck and see how I did.
Well, Rob, this is always the favorite part of my show, when you are dancing around the right answer and you end up on the wrong one.
Did I get the A? Is it A?
It is A.
Man, I'm such a perfect idiot. I do this every time. Like, oh, this one's really intriguing and interesting. Let me go with the other one. Let me talk myself out of it.
So this is what it says here, is that Rand's actual translation tool turned basic combat training into that corporate speak phrase, a small but real example of how far the military to civilian resume gap can get. So just talking through the Rand's analysis of what it thinks boot camp is to what civilians actually think it is. It reminds me of, you've seen those 6 frames where it says, this is what my family thinks I do. This is what my friends think I do. Yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, go ahead and throw it on your resume, but be careful when they ask you about it. Don't bring up the time the drill sergeant made you do jumping jacks until you threw up your spaghetti. Like that might not be the time to bring that up in the interview.
I could handle some work stress.
Yeah, right. Let me tell you about this guy next to me that we're on the grenade range that could barely butter his own toast, but they handed him a live grenade and expect him to throw it over the wall. That's pretty stressful.
That's right.
All right. Well, with that absurdity behind us, it's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Fiscal Foxhole. Whether you're active duty, vet, retiree, or just trying to figure out this money thing, you're in the right place. We're glad you're here. If it's valuable to you, please show us the love. Please give us a review on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. And of course, share it with anybody and everybody you think would find the same value that you did today. With that, we've got some takeaways for today. Omen, please tell us what they are.
Key takeaway number 1, reinvesting dividends is a great habit for building wealth, but it's still just a default setting, not personalized advice. It's worth assessing where you want that cash to land. Key takeaway number 2, as you approach your military end date, get ready to reconsider a lot. A reduced lifestyle, for instance, is a great strategy to buy your new path time to actually work. And key takeaway number 3, the best career move you can make before terminal leave is getting curious about what's next. The next best move is to get comfortable with it not working out the way you thought.
We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions you'd like answered on the show, please send us a note to FiscalFoxhole@gmail.com. If you heard something today that you'd like to discuss further, or you just want to dig deeper into your own financial game plan, both Rob and Omen are accepting new clients and always happy to chat. You'll find the links to their websites or to book appointments in the show notes. Rob Moore and Omen Quelvog are both registered investment advisor representatives. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. While they are both advisors, they are not your advisors. Therefore, nothing you hear on Fiscal Foxhole should be taken as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. For guidance tailored to your situation, please consult a qualified professional who understands your individual circumstances.
So there I was on LinkedIn. So I take the Andy Panko approach, and many of our listeners may not know who Andy Panko is, but he's another flat fee advisor, and he's on this path to call out people who sell insurance products that are not appropriate for people's situation. And he more specifically calls out the information that they post on LinkedIn that, will be fear-mongering, will be leading people down paths that may not be completely accurate, or they only choose to highlight some positive aspect of a insurance product, but they fail to talk through the negative aspects of products. And so I've started to take a similar approach to people who are doing that specifically to like targeting military and military retirees with pensions. As we talked about on our last episode, 2 episodes ago, aren't necessarily, when did we talk about that? I guess that was last episode. That was the news article. So annuities in the military don't land quite as well. Like I know it as a tool. I have it in my pocket in case it does fit a certain circumstance. But for the most part, military retirees with pensions don't need annuities.
Right.
So there's this guy I've been following, following.
Not
he has
Andy,
a
not Andy Panko.
No, not Andy
Yeah,
Panko.
okay. Yeah,
no,
sorry,
this is an actual salesman. That he's a retired I'll say retired military person. I'm not gonna name him by name, but yeah, he posted on there that there's basically 3 things that you can do with a TSP, and that was to keep it in the TSP, roll it to a current employer plan, or to roll it into a product. And I corrected him on this one time before and said, well, actually, you can roll it into an IRA as well, and just keeping things simple and factual. And he decided to post it again to a different crowd. And I said, what about IRAs? That's all I said in the comment. What about IRAs?
Yeah.
And finally, like a bunch of people like chimed in like, yeah, what about IRAs? And just so all these comments started to stack up. And this one gentleman said, I personally like to keep TSP open so that if I want to roll money back into it, that's an available option. And
he must listen to FiscalFoxhole.
He must. This is my favorite part. So this annuity salesman went out and got I forget what it's called. It's the FRC. It's the Federal Retirement Counselor. So basically they're supposed to know everything about federal retirees. He got that designation. And so he comments on there, says, why would you want to keep the TSP open and roll money back in?
Oh, my God.
And somebody with the same exact designation chimed in and said, so that you can take advantage of the G fund or do a backdoor Roth conversion.
Yeah.
And then said, you should know this.
Nice. Yeah.
That was like by far my favorite comment. And all it was just asking like, what about IRAs?
Good for you.
Just watching this guy get blown up was somewhat satisfying.
You have a higher appetite for that than I do. Engaging. We've had actually some comments about the podcast and some of the clips we posted and everything. And I know you. Maybe you have a higher sense of justice or something than I do. Where I'm just more like, let them. Let them go. Like I'm just gonna keep doing the right thing and keep doing what I can do. And just people are gonna say stupid stuff, but I do like it. I do admire the fact that you're like. Just drop the little seed of you're not trolling because it's true. What you said is true.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like this little seed of like truth. Like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna sprinkle that in there real quick. Just enough either to inspire others to ask questions like they did, or just maybe get other people to wonder. Like, did this person who's trying to sell me an annuity or an insurance product, is he providing all the right options? Is he providing all the options? Because I imagine people like that succeed in the absence of information.
This is my thing is I try to keep an open mind about all products. They are at my disposal to use and recommend in cases where I think that they are appropriate. Mm-hmm. But these are deceitful tactics to only educate. And he does this under the guise of quote unquote education. This is a deceitful tactic to educate people only on the positive aspects of a particular product and not tell them about how much this product actually costs them in terms of commissions he's paid, of the cap on the growth rates. Yep. You just name it. Like there's a lot of negative aspects to the comfort it might buy somebody to have a guaranteed stream of income in this particular case, but this applies to all insurance products. There's a cost to all insurance products. You just have to decide whether it's worth it. But in order to decide if it's worth it, you have to know what it is.
That's why I love what you and I do, man. Because we don't worry about that. Well, all we do is provide all the information and then make the right choice. Like you said, these are still at our disposal. We could do it, but that's with all of the relevant information digested properly and then making the decision after that. I'm reminded the same thing. There was a company, an insurance company that posts regularly on social media that I've seen comparisons that should be illegal. Like I wonder,
Yes.
like how on earth? There was one that they were comparing an IUL and a 401k.
They do that all the time.
It's unbelievable, and they list the pros and cons of each. And I remember, I can't speak to it. I didn't name the company, so I guess I'm off the hook. But there was something like implied that a 401k wasn't tax efficient or wasn't as tax efficient as an IUL or something.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like you're lying at that point. Like I understand there's probably some fine print that you could justify that if a regulator came and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Why would you say that?" There's probably some research or fine print that you're like, "Oh, we meant it like this." But that's not what the client or the consumer is reading or how they're taking it. Again, stuff like that, it exists in the absence of information. So good for you, man.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I look at this is if you aren't willing to tell me all about the product, the good and the bad, because they all have their characteristics. If you aren't willing to tell me about the bad, why?
Or what it costs.